the richest place in the world is a cemetery, right? People die with so much wisdom and knowledge within them. And of course, wisdom comes through experience. The older we get, the more we experience, the wiser we become.
Wow, that's what I've got to say about this week's episode that features a true powerhouse of an entrepreneur, business owner, and human being, Phillip Di Bella.
Be part of the change you want to see in the world. And we need to think about the impact. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean that you need to verbalize it. Just because you have an opinion doesn't mean you need to verbalize it.
As the founder of Di Bella Coffee, which he started with just $5,000 in 2002 and sold it for $47 million 12 years later, he is now the founder and managing director of the Coffee Commune, a hub that brings cafe owners, roasters and suppliers together to connect, collaborate and accelerate business success and profitability.
We should all be involved. And sometimes being better means you've got to go 2 steps back to go 10 steps forward. And I say that to people, it's okay to go backwards as long as you're not constantly going backwards. You can't jump in a car and keep reversing because you're going to crash. But you've got to certainly reverse at some time, and which means you've got to go backwards to go forward.
Phil, welcome to Share.
Steve, thanks for having me.
Mate, it's absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, and can't wait to get your insights and, see where we kind of dive into today.
Yeah, freestyling's the best, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Definitely conversational. So, and I know you've got a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and would love to obviously kind of share as much as that as I can with listeners. So I wanted to start. Who is Phillip Di Bella?
Well, in short, I'm a son of migrants. I've got a good Sicilian blood running through the veins. My parents migrated here in the 60s with my brother and sister, who were both a lot older than me. My brother's 13 years older, my sister 11 years older. So apparently they say when there's a big gap, it's like you're the firstborn again. So I think I got the best of both worlds, being the youngest, but also being treated like I was the firstborn. Always hung around older people. Like I said, my parents were working class, great values. It wasn't about possessions or materialism. They didn't have brand new cars and travel overseas, but always had a roof over our head and good food on the table. So it was all about moments, and it's something I talk about now. Life's measured in moments, not in possessions. So that's a snapshot of my upbringing. When I grew up, I wanted to be in control of my destiny. The goal was to have enough money to do what I when I wanted. To have the same sort of lifestyle as my parents, but if you wanted to buy a brand new car, you could. If you wanted to travel overseas, you could. And that's how I've always benchmarked my life is, am I healthy, and do I have enough time and money to do what I want when I want? They're the keys for me. And so that sort of gives you a snapshot of university degree. Didn't know if I wanted to be a lawyer or an accountant. If I did law, I probably would have put someone in jail, or I would have been in jail, because I only read every second word, which was not very good. And accountant, well, I think I had too much personality for an accountant. So no jibes or digs at accountants, but I ended up doing commerce and fell in love with marketing. Marketing and human resource management, all about people and strategy, which I absolutely loved. And that's the snapshot, was working since the age of 14 in my brother's pizza shop, learning how to wash dishes, then learning how to cook, and then experienced, a coffee machine for the first time, and worked for Brisbane's first coffee house, being Cosmopolitan. And then in 2002, started my own company. So that's a bit of a, snapshot. We've sold it in 2017, and now we've started a new one, the Coffee Commune. And that's a bit of this is my life in a couple of minutes.
That's awesome. And that's kind of a table of contents of the episode today, I think. But can I go back to, obviously coming from a working class family, is that where your work ethic was really born?
Yeah, it was. My dad used to always say, when it's winter, I don't hide under the sheets and take a day off. And when it's the beautiful, nice summer weather, I don't take a day off and go to the beach. I mean, he worked at the Royal Brisbane Hospital as a gardener for 26 years. And I think he only ever took 5 days off in 26 years. And when he retired, he had like a year's worth of holidays owing, and two and a half long service leaves. Like, it was that sort of work ethic. It was, work is a way you've got to be focused, dedicated, and proud of what you do. And work is a means to be able to support your family and live good moments. So definitely good work ethic from both my parents. And my mother worked sewing in a factory, doing, patterns, then they used to call it. So if people pitched for business at the sewing, she would be the one that would do the original, because she was so good at what she did, for them to win the business. And she worked school hours, because she would make sure she, picked me up from school and dropped me off and stuff like that. So yeah, it's both very, very good work ethic and all about the family. It is how I was brought up.
Yeah. And what do you think these days from the younger generation? They don't, there's a lot that don't seem to have the same work ethic. What are some of the things that we've lost?
Well, I think what's happened is we've gotten, let's face it, every year, if you look at it through, and I'll use an analogy my dad does in a minute, that we've got more resources available as parents. And of course, we want the best for our kids. So I don't think the outcome is negative, but the intention is positive. And I say that in business, you could have a positive intention, but the execution could be poor or the outcome could be negative. And I think that's the case. I think most parents want the best for their kids, and they will use the resources they have to provide that. My dad says he says to my son, when I was your age, Ali, we used to have to walk 5 kilometres a day to go and get water in our village, right? But he goes, your dad just turned the tap on because it evolved to that. And he goes, and now we're buying bottled water for you. So if you look at that, it's because of the resources. Obviously, my dad had less resources than I did. I've got more resources, and so Ali benefits and Arnika, my daughter, benefits from those resources. But I think that's where the problem becomes, is that we've make it too easy. We make our kids go, right, here's the resources, but we don't teach the lesson. And it's something I'm very conscious about with my 16-year-old daughter and 14-year-old boy, is to teach the lesson. And things like good behavior gets rewarded and bad behavior has consequences. You can't get up and start sprinting. You've got to crawl, you've got to walk, you've got to jog, and then you've got to run. There's a process. I don't just go and buy a new car because I can. I set a goal and then I say, I'm going to buy a new car. I don't just book a holiday because I can. I say, right, what am I going to achieve in this quarter before I take holidays? And they do the same thing as kids. So, of course, we've got more resources to provide for our children, but what we're doing is making sure not to forget to teach the lesson behind it, and that, you're not an amazing person because you've got more than somebody else. Materialism doesn't measure the person. It's their values. It's the way they treat people, the way they treat themselves, the way they treat others. And keep bringing it back. But in short, we've got more resources today, and we're probably achieving less than what we used to, because we're losing that depth. We're measuring the wrong. We're not measuring the values. We're measuring the things, and that's not something that I'm about, and certainly not something I want my kids to be about.
Yeah, and I think these days as well, I'm passionate about mental health. I think some of the ease of today when it comes through the younger generation is that we're losing some of that strong resilience as a person.
Yeah. Look, we've got to raise kids. I've just finished reading a book, Raising a Boy Who Likes Himself, and they've written one, Raising a Girl Who Likes Himself. And I tell you, it's very profound, because it's very, it talks about, your perception on things. It talks about body consciousness. It talks about strength of character. It talks about the people you hang around. It talks about measuring you with you. All of these things that we've known for years but have forgotten about, because we do live in a world of abundance, let's be honest, because of people, what my parents and generation before me have done, have laid the platform for what we can achieve, and moving forward the same thing, because of what we do in our generation will lay the platform for the next generation. And we need to make sure that that's a positive thing, not a negative thing. I'm a big believer in that. We come with nothing and we go with nothing. I mean, I say you don't ever see a hearse you don't ever see a removalist truck following a hearse to a funeral. And when people get up and talk about eulogies, they talk about moments, they talk about memories, they talk about impact of character. They talk about, how somebody made you feel, not what they gave you. And these are the things that I think we have to come back to basics on. And again, I'm very conscious about that. Don't get me wrong. I love my things. I love my cars. I love my holidays, but they don't own me. I own them, but they don't own me. If I had to be without a car, that's fine. If I had to not go on holidays, that's fine too. So whilst I love that and own things, they don't own me. And I think that's a really big difference. I don't need them. I want them. And when you operate in that space, I think you operate with some sort of, clarity and not a weight on your shoulders. Because again, it's not measured in things, it's measured in moments.
Yeah. And it sounds like the things and the materialistic items that you've kind of got have been a celebration and a reward for the hard work that you've put in.
Yeah, look, and I'm very grateful for them. I mean, because there's a lot of people that work hard out there and don't have the same result, or don't have, I'm conscious of that. But, I do like nice things. But again, the things don't own me. And I've worked for them. Sometimes someone will go, oh, hey, why did you get a red Ferrari? Well, because that's the color I wanted. That's what I like. And I'm buying it for me. I'm not buying it for what it represents. I grew up as a kid saying one day I want to drive nice cars. And that's a thing for me. But also I believe in giving back. I mean, I grew up, my parents, Dad used to earn $450 a week, but he still used to give his $100 to the Red Cross, $100 to the Heart Foundation. And, if somebody came knocking at the door, it'd always be $2 or $5. And this is going back 40 years ago. And he was on $450 a week. And he said, if you can't give money, donate time. Do something nice for people, cook meals for your neighbours and give it to them. Dad used to get wine from Stanthorpe in big barrels, and I used to help him fill the bottles. And he'd go and give wine to the neighbours. I mean, it's that acts of service. It's not about just giving money out. It's about donating your time, helping somebody, having that impact. I think it's something that, two things we've forgotten a lot of and we've got to be conscious about is meaningful conversations and having an impact. And that's no different whether we're talking family, we're talking individuals with ourselves, or we're talking work. And it's a philosophy I apply across all three.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to financial or that impact for me, if I'm not feeling quite right, it's like, actually, I'm going to go and do something for someone. And I love that. I'm my happiest when I'm serving, when I'm giving back, when I'm doing something for someone. And it's just such a key part of being content and being, yourself and also being happy.
Yeah, I agree. Steve, I got into an argument once with somebody because we're at a table and he goes, I give to charity not expecting anything back. And I said, well, that's not true. And he goes, well, it is true. And I said, well, I give to charity because I get this amazing feeling, exactly what you just said. And so I'm giving because it makes me feel good. But I'm giving because somebody else is going to need it. But let's not be daft about it. It does have an impact. I'm not giving because I want something back in terms of materialism. I'm getting back that gratefulness. I feel grateful and privileged to be in a position where I can give my time or give some money or give advice because giving is not just money, right? Sometimes giving money is just too easy. It's about giving advice, spending time with people. It's giving your time, sharing your wisdom. I always say that the richest place in the world is a cemetery, right? Because people die with so much wisdom and knowledge within them, that we don't get to hear it and knowledge. And of course, wisdom comes through experience. The older we get, the more we experience, the wiser we become. Especially if we put ourselves out there exposing. So I'm hearing you, Steve. It's all about, when you give that act of service, whether it's money, time, wisdom, knowledge, whatever it is, it makes you feel good. And then they've clinically proven that it raises the endorphins and all the rest of it and makes us feel good. So I always say if somebody, or if everyone does something within their capability, then the world will be a better place,
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's interesting. I've got two sons, 15 now and 17. One's about to finish school. My 15-year-old has got great work ethic and, is different to the 17-year-old, and they've both got their strengths. But the 15-year-old, when he was 14, got him into his first job from a paid job. Prior to that, he started a recycling business when he was 8, and he's done 3D printing, and he's done all these different things over the time, plant and seed business and stuff like that. So he's always wanted to do stuff. But it was interesting when he started his first, kind of actual paid job at a supermarket. It's interesting. I said to him, there's some key things that you need to remember. If you get offered a shift, take it. Just some simple stuff, like always be there 10 minutes early, or, all these different things that I remember I grew up, and I don't know who taught me, but I just implemented it. And there's some of the things that I think are lacking. Some of that, no, I don't. No, I want to hang out with my friends. I don't want to take a shift, all those kind of things. And one of the other things I thought was quite interesting was, we went and got him dressed really nicely. He had his nice shirt on, and I said, tuck your shirt in, nice belt, walk in there, presented really well. And after about the second shift, he came out with his shirt out, and I said, why is your shirt out, And he said to me, oh, no one wears their shirt tucked in. And they were like, oh, what are you wearing your shirt tucked in for? And I thought, what a prime example of especially the younger generation, they all care what everyone else thinks, right? But to stand out, you actually have to stand out, right? And you have to dress better, be better presented, show up on time, and have that extra work ethic. But it's interesting because the younger generation, many feel like, I'm just going to fit in. I'm not going to stand out.
Yeah, you're right. And the book that I've just finished reading talks about that, is about being you. It's not about what others think, it's what you think. And it's conversations, like as parents, the conversations we have with our children, right, is to say, well, be you and make an impact. Tuck your shirt in because that's what you believe is the right thing to do. Don't untuck it because everyone else does the same thing. If we're all the same, then the world wouldn't move forward, right? We all have different tastes with different likes, different things, and different capabilities. Everyone's got different magic in them, and that's the uniqueness. And we've got to come back to celebrating the uniqueness of individuals. Unfortunately, because of social media and all the rest of it, again, I don't blame social media, I blame people, because social media is a resource. The internet is a resource. How you use that resource is what matters. So when parents blame the internet, like my kids use technology, but I say, today on the way to school, when I was dropping Ali off at school, I said, what series are you watching now? And he said, I just finished watching MasterChef in America. And I said, what do you like about it? He goes, just they've got a different way of cooking. They've got different types of dishes than MasterChef. Now, I have a conversation, what are you watching? And then have a discussion with him. Or I could turn around and say, why are you always on your phone? Now the phone is an entity. It's a resource. He's using that phone as a resource in a positive way. He's learning. Now he's 14. He cooks for himself. He likes to experiment. He cleans up after himself. He empties the dishwasher in the morning. So just that is a great example of, just because there's more resources, don't blame the resource, blame the parenting, blame your attitude towards it, and you're shaping the attitude of a child as a parent, right? So, when people say, the bloody youth of today, well, what are you doing to change that? What are you doing to contribute to that? What are you doing to make sure they're better tomorrow than what they are today? Because if everyone does their own bit, then again, we'll have a better place. But the key takeaway is don't blame the technology, because the technology, it's like a scalpel. A scalpel can be used by a surgeon for good, or it can be used by a criminal for bad. And technology is no different. It's a resource that can be used for amazing things and positive things, or the bad intentions, a person can use it for bad, such as, all the media and the comments and the hype and that are going on. I mean, I was asked this morning about, what did you think about the lady rapper, whatever they call it, breakdancer? And I said, look, I really don't have a comment. I mean, I don't believe breakdancing should be an Olympic sport when you don't have netball as an Olympic sport. Like there's so many other sports that warrant it. I said, but that's my opinion. Somebody thought that breakdancing should be there. If I don't like it, don't watch it. But I don't actually have a comment on the performance. I didn't even see the performance. I'm not interested in seeing the performance. But just because somebody performs, everyone thinks they've got a right to comment on it. Like, I don't like watching hockey, so I don't watch it. It doesn't mean I don't respect their athletes. They've made the Olympics. They're there. What an amazing achievement. They're representing the country. But, my attitude is if I don't like it, don't watch it. I don't go on there and start bagging people, and just reading some of the comments is ridiculous and really does not contribute to a great society. And that's a perfect example of the resource. Don't blame the resource. The person making that comment is the idiot, right? It's not the computer's fault, and it's not Facebook's fault. It's your fault. Take accountability for it, which is another key message out of that, right?
Yeah, and I think with that example as well, let's think back to when Bradbury, he was mocked. Right? Yeah. He was mocked back in the Olympics when he everyone else fell over and he came through and they went, the accidental gold medalist and all these things, right? But, I said to my wife last night, I said, she can, this breakdancer, she can, and I've actually messaged her, but she can actually spin this to, there's resilience. And you were talking about, we've got to celebrate the uniqueness, right? Correct. Also as well, as Australians, what are we known for? Having a go. Yeah. Having a crack.
Yeah, right? So why should we be putting it down, right?
That's exactly right. But it's interesting because it shows the mindset, especially in social media and in society, is that it's very quick to go to the negative. But I looked at it and I saw a lot of the comments and I saw a lot of it's interesting actually because I was listening to the radio this morning on my way to get coffee. And we're going to talk about coffee, but sure. I was on my way and they're kind of making fun of the breakdancer, and I'm like, hang on, guys. In some segments on your show, you're talking about how, you don't like people being critical of you or being critical of celebrities or whatever it is, but then you guys are making a mockery of this person, and I'm like, hang on, what are you teaching people here? You're actually fueling what you as yourself don't like.
Correct. And you can't say it any better, Steve. It's like, everyone feels like they have to have an opinion. Why? You can have an opinion, but it doesn't mean someone needs to hear it, or it doesn't mean you need to share it. And I mean, it says a lot more. I always say that the negative comments and the hurtful comments says a lot about the person making them, much more than it does about the person doing it. And of course, it doesn't matter how strong you are, they're going to affect people. A constant barrage of comments. Doesn't matter, you can be the toughest and thick-skinned person in the world. It's still going to have an impact, right? And that's not appropriate. It just really isn't. On one hand, everyone's saying, mental health, and, we've got to nurture people's mental health. And then on the other hand, people are contributing to bad mental health by their actions. My wife has a great saying, if you can't improve on the silence, don't speak. And she uses that on me a fair bit. She'll say, if you can't improve on the silence, don't speak. And it's actually a very profound comment. Like, why do we need to comment on everything? One of my favorites is I say, I'm going to tell you the truth or say nothing at all. So if somebody asks me a question and I feel like they don't want to hear the truth, I just say nothing. And they'll say, why are you not responding? Because you're probably not going to like what I have to say, and I'm certainly not going to say something just to appease you. It's just because you have a thought doesn't mean that you need to verbalize it. Just because you have an opinion doesn't mean you need to verbalize it. And we need to think about the impact. I love Dandy's words as one of my favorites, be part of the change you want to see in the world. It's a motto that I get involved in. I talk to my team here and I say, hey, you want a better culture? What are you doing to contribute to better culture? If you want to feel more inspired, what are you doing to inspire others? You want a more green and sustainable workplace, then what are you doing to make it green and sustainable? It leads with you, be part of that change that you want to see, and leadership like that becomes infectious and people follow. And there's leadership in everybody. It doesn't matter what their hierarchical position in an organization is. Have a cause worth following, and people will follow. And I think that's a big one when it comes to impact is how much, you want people to impact. I mean, behind me, I don't know if you can see it, there's a sign there it is, that says do more, and it's in my office because it reminds me, talk as much as you want, but make sure you do more. I say to people when they come in my office, you're doing a lot of talking, just make sure you do more than what you say. And if and that goes for everything, that goes personally, professionally, and family. So it really is something that I believe in.
When they say success leaves clues, so does failure, right? So I'm sure you've had people sit in front of you with your kind of mentoring, and they're like talking about all the great things they've done and all the things they're doing, and you sit there and you go, so if you were doing all those things, why would you need help, right? You're obviously talking a lot, but you're not doing more.
Yeah, and you can see it straight away. When people want to come and pick your brain, there's two types. There's the person who comes in and asks all the questions, and that's what you want. Because if I'm going to sit down with someone, like I had the fortunate, there's another one behind me now, I don't know if you see it, Richard Branson and me, I was a lot heavier and bigger then, but I got to spend a week at Necker Island, and I can assure you, I wasn't there talking about myself. I was there asking him as many questions as I could, because I wanted to learn. So you got the people that walk in and want to tell you how great they are, or you got those that come in and say, I really want to, share your wisdom with me. And that's something that I do on the opposite side. When I'm sitting down with someone that's far smarter and achieve, or knows things about other things that I don't know, I want to pick their brain. I want to ask them. I don't want to be talking about myself. I want to be asking them about their experience, their wisdom, their success, their failures, because we learn from failures. People don't want to talk about failures. I'm more than happy to talk about my failures, because, I've learned from them, and if somebody else can learn from them, then that's even better, but as a society, people just want to hear the good stuff. Well, it's not all good. You see the top of a building, you don't see the foundations that get laid, 6 months before the building go up. And that's ourselves as human. We've all got foundations, good and bad, that make us who we are today.
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's interesting. It's the whole kind of sense of this podcast. Why I launched it was because I want to tap into people's story and kind of get those insights. Because everyone that's on my podcast, they're doing some great things in the world. They're making an impact, but there's always that story behind. There's always those steps that those people took. And I always say, if people listening to this can actually just take one thing away from the conversation and implement it, then that's fantastic, right? Because it's learning from that journey. Because I remember years ago, obviously a long career in real estate, and my wife is still in real estate. We'll still own a real estate business. But it's interesting because years ago, I remember all the agents would go to a conference and they'd stand up on a stage and they'd tell you all the good things that were happening and everything like that, right? And I remember it was great. That's changed a little bit now. We're digging more into the story. We're digging into more work-life balance. What are they doing for their health? What do they do to work smarter, not harder? These kind of things. And, an agent stood up there one day and he said, I'm here because I'm a successful, award-winning, I do a massive number of transactions and income. But let me tell you about my last 3 days, and he's like, I had 4 big deals. I had 3 complaints come in. I had this, I lost 2 listings, all these kind of things. And he said, that's what it is, And another agent, actually, Chris Gilmore, CEO of All Properties Group, he said to me, when he was standing up one day, he's like, I always wanted to hit $1 million GCI. And he said, it's interesting. He said, I remember it was the 30th of June and I hit it. And it went over by about 3,000. And he said, do you know what? There was no marching band. There was no applause. And he said, I woke up on the 1st of July and my GCI was at 0. I just had to go again, right? So he said, sometimes we're aiming for things that, what do they mean? Yeah. Like, it's just a figure. We've been told that we should do this or we should do that or we should hit that. Is it actually aligned to what we want to do in business, what we want to do in life? And are we happy?
Yeah, no, right. 100%. We measure the wrong things sometimes. We measure the wrong outcomes. My goals, I never put measures up. Of course, we've got budgets and all the rest of it, but we don't manage people in line with budgets. I manage people in line with their purpose, their goals, the purpose of the organisation, the goal of the organisation. In fact, the commune, is all about collaboration. It's where the people come in our industry to collaborate. Our promise and our purpose, what we live by, is about helping people accelerate their potential. You don't hear anything about numbers there. Now, of course, we've got a budget, we've got a CFO, we've got an FO, an FC, a financial controller, but we don't manage numbers. We manage people. We don't even manage people. We work with people. Numbers are a byproduct. So you're right. When people set goals, they're just setting the wrong goals, the wrong measures. So there's one for the listeners is, even personally, professionally, and family. I always talk, because they're the 3 areas of our lives. That's why you hear me talk about it. What are we going to do personally, which means us, learn new language, lose weight, whatever it is. What are we going to do with our families? Take them away, what sort of memories, learn how to dance as a family, learn how to cook, whatever it is. And then what are the goals that you're going to achieve at work? But those outcomes then all have to be broken down into steps. They all have to be broken down through to a journey, a process to achieve. So, are we measuring the right things when it comes to personal, professional, and family? And more importantly, what's the purpose of it? Because like you said, $1 million is what? Whereas if he measured it at, I have financial freedom. I want to hit financial freedom. And there to do that, I need to hit $1 million. Well, there's your purpose, right? Because then you wake up on the 1st of July and you go, I've got financial freedom. Not, I'm back at 0. So it's a classic example of, just measure the right thing to make sure you're setting the right goals, the right purpose, the right outcomes, and working backwards on them.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Coffee Commune there. Obviously, the journey with coffee started at Di Bella Coffee, yeah?
Yeah. Well, before I was, Son of Migrants, I grew up having, as soon as I could reach the stove, my dad told me it was my turn to make the coffee at home in a stovetop, right? We didn't have a fancy machine at home. But yeah, I played around on a coffee machine at the age of 14, 15 at my brother's pizza shop, and then really stepped into coffee when I worked in Cosmopolitan Coffee in Brisbane, which was the first cafe roasting house in the Valley back in, I was 17, so 1992. Started there and I was there for 9 years, and while I was doing my degree, I ended up building a wholesale side of the business. At the time, we were roasting coffee for Merlot out of Cosmopolitan Coffee. And then the owner just, was my best mentor because he taught me everything what not to do. He was a terrible leader. He was a terrible manager. He was a terrible human, treated people poorly. But rather than up and leave, which is what most people do these days, I stayed there. I kept the diary and I said, what are the things that he's doing wrong that I would do different? And what is it that I would do if it was my business? And I stayed there for 9 years. I learned what not to do in business. Merlot started because he was a terrible manager and person, because the person that was roasting coffee there at the time, his name was Ernie. Dean Merlot made him an offer and said, hey, you don't like where you are, come and work, let's start roasting our own coffee. And Merlot was born, and Merlot's done an amazing job in building a company. My turn came in 2002 when I left and started Di Bella. And if you look at that, the cosmopolitan business, because of the mindset of the owner, contributed to a Di Bella and a Merlot, which, we became the biggest in the country. And Merlot was certainly number 2 or 3 in the state. So number 1 and number 2 or 3 in the state all came from a business where the owner didn't look after his people, didn't invest in the business, didn't invest in packaging, all the rest of it. So there's a couple of messages in that. If you don't run a good business, people are going to learn from you what not to do and then move on and do their own. So when I started Di Bella, I made sure that I did everything as best as I could. I always said to my team, we need to be best in class. Internally and externally. And when people leave, because they will, the only thing they can do is copy you. And no one wants second best. No one wants a copy. They want the original, and there's many brands that are out there now that came from the Di Bella stable, and positive stuff. Like I started Elixir Coffee. That was me that started that and then sold it to my wife's cousins who own it now, and they've done a great job with that. We helped Dan Pappas at Fonzie Abbott get started. He was a customer of Di Bella and then started Roasting Zone, and Fonzie Abbott's a great brand and doing great things. There's a few other brands that have all offshoot. The Roasting Warehouse, I started that. I owned it in Brisbane, in Sydney, Melbourne, WA, and sold it to the current owner who's doing great things with that brand. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud that these people, the offshoots of the brands, and they're 3 powerful brands in coffee, Elixir, Fonzie Abbott and Roasting Warehouse all came from the Di Bella stable, and 2 of them I owned personally. Didn't own Fonzie Abbott. We guided him and mentored and helped him start up, right? Now, I talk about them as positive experiences. Why? Because we were positive in what we did. We weren't afraid of competition. We can't own the whole market, and we don't expect to own the whole coffee market. So I'm very proud of these brands that are now kicking massive goals and doing great things. I think it's a reflection of what we achieved and what we did, and how strong our business was. And of course, I sold in 2017 and Retail Food Group bought it, and I'm very grateful for that. Unfortunately, they changed the direction of the business and lost a lot of what we were renowned for. But hey, that's not my issue and it's not my responsibility, because when I left and handed over the keys,
And that's the key thing, obviously, as well, is you see a lot of businesses that do get sold, and it goes to that franchise model, it goes to the big organization model, and it loses its homegrown feel.
Yeah. And again, people say, how do you feel about that? Well, I don't. I mean, I'm always saddened when somebody's, dropped the ball or someone's been done by. That's the empathy in me. But I'm not responsible for it. I sold the business because I needed to lose weight, and I've lost 70 kilos.
Awesome.
I was traveling 3 weeks a month. I never saw my kids. So now I take all school holidays off. I didn't sell for money. We were making plenty of money. That's where we had such a big exit. I just wasn't taking the money off the table because I didn't need it. So I was reinvesting back into the business, and buying properties and doing stuff like that. But I certainly didn't sell because of money, because obviously we were making good money, but it was putting it back in with the bigger picture. We bought properties, we did stuff like that. But the catalyst for me was, 1, family, because I was traveling 3 weeks a month, Australia-wide, and 2, most importantly, my health. And when you visit your doctor and quote unquote, he says you're the fittest fat fuck I know, now lose weight. And that's exactly what he said. I'm not being crude. He said, it's time to drop the weight. Otherwise, one day you're just not going to wake up. And that's why I decided to sell the business and said, my wife reminded me, you always said that you wanted a business to have enough money to do what you want when you want. But you certainly don't have the time to do what you want when you want. And you certainly don't have the health move. You won't have the health moving forward if you don't sort it out, which makes up my, people say now, what do you define as success? That's my success triangle. Health is at the top, non-negotiable. And then the bottom 2 axes is time and money. Enough time and money to do what you want when you want. And if you achieve those 3 things, you are super successful. And it doesn't matter whether you're driving no car or driving Ferraris. If you're happy and you're comfortable, it doesn't matter whether you own a plane or you don't fly at all. Like my parents, they're 88 and 80, right? So they're quite healthy when you look at their age. They've had enough money, and they've never owned more than one property, enough money to do what they want, when they want, what they want. Dad doesn't want to go overseas. He hasn't been back overseas since he migrated here in the 60s. Mum's been overseas 3 or 4 times. And time, enough time to do what you want. If you play golf, you need more time than somebody who plays tennis. So it's relative to you. So key takeaway for the listeners is really draw that triangle. Make sure your health is in order up the top. It's not negotiable. And then what is the amount of time and money that you need to do what you want when you want? And when you achieve those 3 things, then to me, you're super successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really shifting your mindset around that as well. I lost 60 kilos back in 2020, just after COVID. And so I know that journey, and obviously I've gone through a journey of burnout and everything like that. So it does shift your mind to think what is most important. And I'm actually really grateful that I've gone through the journey that I've gone, because I wouldn't have learned what I know now, and I wouldn't have the different mindset that I do now, that I had linked to my ego, to my self-worth. I thought my identity was a real estate agent and business owner and a community leader. That was hard to leave. But once I pushed through that, I went, actually, I'm not those things. Yes, that's part of me, but that's not who I am.
Yeah. What was your trigger? What was that?
My trigger was just I was burnt out. I remember sitting on the couch and I just didn't feel right in early 2018, and I brain fog. I was forgetting appointments, all those kind of things, and then I struggled for a couple of years. And I tell my story around going to the doctor, getting blood tests, getting other tests, and them saying, "Oh, you're fine." So then I went more into a holistic side of things, so naturopath and some kind of holistic elements. And then over time, I got good psychologist, good GP, and good psychiatrist, and it all helps, right? It's not one thing; it's kind of all little things. But at the end of the day, I think having the focus. Probably 2 years ago, I want to be me. I'm not feeling like I can be me. So I wanted to be me. I actually had been kind of molded into how I should think, how I should act, what I should do. And I'm like, hang on, no, I've got control here. I can take the action to be the person that I want to be. The hardest thing with that, and you'd know this as well, Phil, is that when you start taking actions towards being the person that you want to be, that makes a lot of other people very uncomfortable.
It certainly does. You learn very quickly who's loyal to you or who's loyal to the need of you. And you've hit it on the head, Steve. You really do, because there's 3 types of self. There's self-care, there's selfless, selfish, and what you want, the one in the middle, is self-care. You want that balance and harmony of selfless and selfish. It's not selfish to be selfish. And that's why the word self-care, comes into play. And that's so important. It's, because it's that balance of when do you give yourself to others and when do you retreat back and say, it's me time and what I need to do. And everybody needs to do more of that without feeling guilty. And unfortunately, a lot of people do feel guilty when they're being selfish. But I tell you, it's something my wife's taught me, is you're a better you when you work on you. You're better to be around. You're easier to be around. Everyone loves you more, being obviously her, the kids, when you're in a better place. So do what you need to do to be in a better place. So be selfish so that you can be selfless. And of course, that's what we call self-care. And I mean, listeners need to really understand that and go, well, if you're not feeling at the top of the best of what you are, there's a good chance that you're not being selfish enough. You're not taking that time to self-care. And it is important.
Before we get back into the episode, from time to time you might have a burning question, a guest recommendation, a comment or some feedback, which I always appreciate. If so, I'd love to continue the conversation after this episode, so let's connect. I'm easy to find, but the best place to engage and connect is on Instagram, @TheSteveHodgson. But that's enough from me. Let's get back into the episode. Yep. And we check in. I talk about, we check in, like a car, right? We take our car to a regular service. It comes up, you've got to service it. You ring up, you book it, or even some of these new cars, you just press a button and it books it for you. But we don't do that on ourselves, So we check in on our businesses and our car and these kind of things. But then most people, especially in the corporate world and as business owners and leaders, we don't actually check in on ourselves. So I say one thing, if you have not, and I talk to in workshops and when I'm talking to business leaders, I say, when was the last time you went and had a full medical, right? You should have one at least every 12 months, and get it, work out what's not good, what's not right, because sometimes you can be feeling not great and we wear it like a badge of honor, right? Oh, we're stressed, we're tired. It's just part of being successful. It's part of the daily grind. But sometimes, and I'm going to interview my naturopath in the next few weeks, and we talk about sometimes you can be low in vitamin D, or you can be low in iron, or there can be just little things in your gut microbiome that are affecting the way you feel, right? So, and if you can make these little changes, then that brings you into a point of being able to be the best that you can be. And we should all be striving. Now, we'll all die, trying to be the best that we can be, right? Because you grow, right? So I can be the best that I can be today, but that's different to tomorrow, and that's different to next year, and that's different to 10 years. When people say, oh, you've changed. Well, did you want me to stay the same? No, that's why change.
Well, I like the word evolution. We've evolved, right? Because change has that connotation. And it's funny you say that, because that's one of my favorite taglines is be the best you can be. Not somebody else. Be the best you can be. But yeah, evolution is the word rather than change, because I don't know, for some reason people seem to get it better. But I've evolved. It seems to really sum that change word up, and we should all be evolving. We should be. You made a great point. If you're not better tomorrow than today, or if you're not better next 3 months than what you are today, and sometimes being better means you've got to go 2 steps back to go 10 steps forward. And I say that to people, it's okay to go backwards as long as you're not constantly going backwards. You can't jump in a car and keep reversing because you're going to crash. But you've got to certainly reverse at some time, and which means you've got to go backwards to go forwards. And I love analogies, especially being a strategic marketer. I use analogies all the time. Don't spend the whole day looking in a revision mirror. Look at the front. We've all got those friends, well, hopefully not friends, but more acquaintances, because we don't let them get too close, that are constantly talking about yesterday or last year or the year before. And that's great. Just don't do it constantly. At some point you've got to switch modes and go, well, what's tomorrow? What's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months looks like? It's so important, to strive forward. And I think that's where the whole concept is. You've got to have a purpose. You've got to have a purpose or an outcome or a goal. Call it whatever you want. I like the word purpose rather than a goal or outcome, because it's definitive. The word outcome is definitive. Purpose is definitive. And people don't understand. It's conversations, and I said this before about meaningful conversations. We have 60 to 80,000 conversations a day. If you own a business, you're probably hitting over 100,000 conversations a day with yourself in your head. And that's why the logic behind, and I'm a logic person, I love logic, why you should be talking to yourself positively, not the woo-woo stuff, or you want it, you can have it, because that's bullshit. You can't have everything you want, right? Like you can't go walk in and just take anything you want. I can't go down a Ferrari or Lamborghini and jump in a car and say, thank you, it's mine. It's about logic. It's about thinking, well, if I'm not having positive conversations, mostly with myself, I'm going to be negative. And Dr. Joe Dispenza is a great resource that I love. Quantum physics meets, neuroscience. And he talks about, you get into a bad mood, and if you don't deal with that bad mood, it becomes a personality, it becomes a mindset, right? It morphs from a bloody mood into a temperament. And then the temperament, if you don't deal with it, becomes a bloody mood. And then the mood becomes your personality, and it just starts to escalate. So what started as being in a bad mood, it just keeps getting worse till it gets to, oh, that's your personality. And you never want to get to that stage. You know what people saying, oh, that person's always angry. They're walking around, they're abrupt, they're rude, they're anxious. We're all going to be bad mood, anxious, worried, but make it, deal with it. When it comes, deal with it, and then move on. Don't let it become your personality. And I'm sure we've all got people in our lives that we could point out and go, yep, that person's been in a bad mood for far too long, that it's now their personality. But that's the trickery behind mindset and evolving and understanding that it's okay to fall over. Pick yourself up. Hey, riding a bike. I love two analogies, riding a bike and driving a car. We all remember when we learned to drive, and we all remember when we learned to ride a bike. Why? Because no one could do it for us. They could advise us, they could guide us, they could help us, they could give us resources. But nobody can ride the bike for you. No one can drive the car for you. To drive a car, you have to drive it. To ride a bike, you have to ride it. And there's a process behind it. So I think we just need to remember that. I say to my kids, no one starts perfect. You don't start playing soccer and you're brilliant at it, son. You got to learn. You got to crawl. You got to walk. You got to jog. So go through the process. No one starts perfect. No one starts perfect as a business owner. It's having that mindset to say, I'm open to learning. I'm open to do things. And let's face it, just like I would make a good politician, I like advising, I like talking, I like stirring up what needs to happen when they're doing good things, when they're not doing good things. I mean, I see myself on that outside being more powerful than in politics. I couldn't be on show 24/7. I certainly couldn't do what they do. That's not me. It's not who I am, but I know that. I can tell you what I'm good at. I can tell you what I'm not good at. It's not me. I can't, like I said, I can't be a lawyer because I read too quickly and I skim read. So I know that I couldn't be a lawyer because I don't have the attention to detail that need to as a lawyer. And there's no shame in that. Whereas people are too worried to not talk about what they're not good at. I'm more than happy to talk about what I'm not good at. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. So, it comes back all down to mindset. Bringing it right back down is mindset and being comfortable in who you are. And not everybody has to like you. As you don't see from your journey, as you said before, you lose the weight, you learn who's there for you, you learn who's not there for you when you start to become, more selfish and self-care. But that's okay. Hey.
I love the quote that says, you want everyone to like you, but you don't even like everyone.
Yeah, correct. And you're not going to,
No.
And okay. I always say there's a terminology called affectionate detachment. When you don't finding yourself evolving away, you can't, and friendships evolve too, where you go, hey, I used to hang around this person more. And no, what I'd say you affectionately detach. I don't have to argue with someone to detach from them, and that way there's no awkwardness. I can still say hello when I see them. And instead of seeing them every day, you see them once a week, or instead of once a week, you see them once a month, or instead of once a month, you see them once a year. Doesn't mean that you don't have an affection for them. It's just different. And you detach affectionately rather than have an argument or feel like you have to have an argument, or worse, feel like you have to have a full-on friendship when it's not being authentic. And that's one of my key words, and my number one value is authenticity. Keep things authentic.
Yeah, definitely. Earlier you were talking about, how, being stressed or, you've got a choice to move in it, right? And I always talk about through my journey, and you'd have the same, is that through business, through health, through family, it's kind of, you build up a toolbox. You've got to have the awareness, but you build up this toolbox. So, when people look at some people and go, God, they're always happy. They're not always happy, right? But they've got a toolbox that they reach into and they go, I'm not feeling great today. I might actually have a bit more self-care, or I'm going to go and do some things that, and Dr. Fred Gross talks about this around, having a toolbox full of things that bring you joy, right? So if you're not having a great day, you need to inject some more things that make you happy and bring joy and bring, contentment and make you feel better. So through my, journey of burnout and anxiety and depression and fatigue, which is still ongoing. But for me, I know that, hang on, like the other day, I wasn't feeling great. I booked a massage. Yeah. Did I walk out of the massage feeling better? Oh, yes, I did. Some days it's like I need to get a haircut or I need to do all these things, right? And it's like, it just makes me feel better. It could be like the other day, I went and did a 50K ride on the rail trail down here in northern New South Wales. And I felt at the end, and I was telling my brother the other day, some of the best ideas that I'm going to implement in the next 3 or 6 months came from that 3 hours out on the trail.
Yeah, fantastic. You're right. But what does it come back to? Knowing yourself. And I say to people, how well do you know yourself? Know what makes you angry, what makes you happy, what makes you tick. you need to know yourself. Listeners, that's an important thing for them to understand is, get to know yourself. That's why meditation is great. People say, I can't meditate. You can meditate for 30 seconds, 60 seconds. You can just sit still. Nobody starts perfect, right? It's like ice baths, which I'm now into the hot cold. I've been doing that for a long time. And my wife just bought me recently a proper Odin ice bath. And I can only last, first time I got in, it was 30 seconds. And now it's a minute and a half. And ultimately I want to get to 2 minutes, but it's a process. Nobody starts perfect. And that's just something that it is what we feed our brains, and you've got to have that tool bag of joy. And that's the one thing, if you look at young kids, they seek joy in the simplest of things, in a sand pit, an empty box. I say we've got more resources around us, but are we actually achieving? And I said that earlier in the show, you've got more resources doesn't mean we're naturally achieving more, and that's why entrepreneurship to me has always been an intelligence. It's not a title. Because you look at kids, kids are amazing. Like, look at your son, his seed business, 8 and 9. Where do they get these ideas? Because you know what? They're not caring about what anyone else thinks. They're not worried about what everyone else is going to say. They're not even conscious about the way they look and who they are. They've got this, they're purely within themselves and their mind and saying, hey, I've got this idea and I want to do it. It's just phenomenal. And I think sometimes we just need to be kids more. I remember my parents could never afford, I was a drummer in primary school. My parents couldn't afford a drum kit. It was like 2 weeks of dad's pay to buy a drum kit. That wasn't going to happen. So I set up all different, I had drumsticks. So I set up all different buckets. It's like a drum kit that made different noises, and away I went. I got mum's saucepan out. I got dad's bucket. I got different height buckets, and they all made different noises. And I remember doing that as 7, 8-year-old kid. Just different stuff. I had a BMX bike, and everyone back then had this. There was a special wheels you could buy that made this noise it sounded like like an exhaust. I went and got cards, play cards, and pegged them to my spoke. And so when the wheel went round, it went, it made a similar noise. I just remember
I did the aluminium can of the back tire.
Yeah, there you go. We just play around and do different things. We didn't have a pool, but I had a trampoline. Much to Dad's disgust, I used to, put weights in the middle of the trampoline because it was a big one and fill it up with water. Little did I know that the tarp only lasts 2 years when you do that, so that wasn't a very good experience. But but we just make do. We think we're out there, we're planning with problem solution. Like I said, less resources, so it makes you think. Sometimes when you've got more resources, people lose the ability to think. And that's,
and we do get to a point where I think, I look at it through my son's eyes, you've got that innocence and that real creativity and just want to have a go and that. And then as you get into your teens, it starts to, peer pressure and what people think. And then, you get I've just turned 40 and I'm at a point now where I'm actually getting excited about. Yeah. I feel like an 8 or 9-year-old again, where I'm like, I don't actually give a rat's what anyone else thinks, right? Yeah. And that's really powerful, right? But we lose that in that kind of younger generation, that kind of probably 13, 14, 15 through to kind of maybe late 20s into our early 30s. And I think that's where we're seeing a lack of, everyone calls themselves an entrepreneur now because they make money off Instagram and social media and everything like that. But and entrepreneurship has changed. And I'd love you to kind of make some comment on where you've seen it change, but where the fundamentals or someone that wants to be an entrepreneur, what are the fundamentals that they need to have in place to be an entrepreneur today?
Yeah, look, it's one of my things. So in 2010, Alan Bonsall wrote a book called Entrepreneurial Intelligence, and he based it around me, but he also spoke about other people like Steve Jobs and all the rest of it. And the catalyst is that entrepreneurship is an intelligence, not a title. And the concept of entrepreneurialism, especially in 2010, which is when it started to hit its stride, this whole terminology, is that it starts with a vision. So somebody who's got entrepreneurial intelligence has a very clear vision of what they want to achieve, whether that's a child in the playground or somebody about to start a business. It's about vision. They then have brand. They understand brand. So what is their brand going to stand for? So is behind entrepreneurialism, is I've got this vision I've got this brand. So what are people going to say about my product, or what are people going to say about my service around it, right? And in the middle is emotional intelligence, which is what keeps the glue together around this concept of entrepreneurial. So somebody who's entrepreneurial has entrepreneurial intelligence has a high level of emotional intelligence, right? So has the ability to conceptualize, has the ability to visualize, has the ability to have empathy, and this is what starts to breed this concept of entrepreneurial intelligence. And it's innate in children. If you just watch children, what they do, ask them, what do you see? What are you seeing? I see a dollhouse and they've got cardboard boxes, right? And then they in terms of brand, well, I'm going to make it look like Barbie's dollhouse, or I'm going to make it look like whatever, and they start to go, well, this is what I want you to say about it when I'm finished. That's brand, right? And you watch the process. Now, then Alan in the last 2 years released another book, which was the morphing of entrepreneurial intelligence to what's next. If you want to make it in today's society, so back last decade, it was entrepreneurialism and intelligence around entrepreneurship. Now you have to be a game changer. So the latest book he's released is 17 Rules of Game Changer Thinking, right? And he says that entrepreneurialism is changing to game changer. And the short part of it, while there's 17 rules, it's not because there's 17. There's like the rule of customer, the rule of outside in, and da-da-da. This is the crux of anyone that's listening going, hey, I want to open a business. I want to start a business, or more importantly, I want to stay in business for the next 20 or 30 years. Because remember, Kodak was very big. If you look in the rearview mirror, it's nowhere to be seen now. Nokia, Ericsson, these are all brands that were there. Blockbuster Video. They lasted, but they're not there now anymore. And this to me is something that you have to do either at the start of your journey as an entrepreneur, or as a business owner, whatever you want to call it, or as a game changer, is what problem are you going to solve? That's number one. What is the problem you're going to solve? So if someone comes to me and says, I'm opening a cafe, what are you going to do? What problem are you solving in your cafe? Or what do you mean? What are you going to do different to the person next door? Oh, I don't know. Are you going to be gluten-free focused, paleo focused? Are you going to, what is it? Step two, once you work out what the problem is that you're going to solve. So Di Bella Coffee, I'll contextualize. Di Bella Coffee was to help cafe owners make money. People go, what do you mean? We helped cafe owners make money. Our target audience were owner-operators. We targeted people that had imported coffee, that had lower standard coffee, that could upgrade, that should be doing bigger. We didn't target people like Merlot. Merlot had good coffee. Why do we want to target the same people? We're not going to solve their coffee problem. We're going to help cafe owners make money. And that's what took us from zero to the biggest in the country, is that the problem we solved was to help cafe owners make money. So the next point, and then if you look at the commune is a place of collaboration. It's to help people accelerate their potential. That's the problem we're going to solve, is the problem of where do I get my buying power from? Where do I get my intel knowledge, facility? How do I speed all that up? You come to the commune, right? Now, the next part is how am I going to be more relevant than my competition? Now, when I started Di Bella Coffee, there was 2,000 coffee companies out there. So how was I going to be more relevant? I was going to help people. I was going to ring them for their order, roast their coffee fresh, deliver their coffee. When we deliver their coffee, ask if they need any training booked in, right? See if they need any help with their leases, their menu, their marketing, and we would provide that service, or if they bought our coffee. So we built a whole program of relevance around it. So once you go, what problem do I solve? How do I become more relevant than my competition? You get those two nailed, then you've got the third and most important. How am I going to tell a better story than my competition? Which is marketing. And I tell you what, we might not have had, because there's no such thing as the best coffee on the market. We certainly didn't have the worst, but there's no such thing as the best. But we had the best marketing in the country. And we were very clear and precise with our marketing. And marketing is the art of telling a story so compelling people choose you. And the way we marketed was, don't worry about the coffee. The coffee's good. The coffee comes direct from farms. We can produce the coffee that you want. What we do is help you make money. We help cafe owners make money. And how do we do that? We help you with your leases. We help you with your menu. We help you with the store design. We help you with your training, all the rest of it. And we told that story. Now, the most important part of marketing is the cafe owner would go tell another cafe owner. The cafe owner would go tell another cafe owner. Another cafe owner tells another cafe owner. And all of a sudden, people are ringing you and saying, I want to talk to you about business. And that's how we built Australia's biggest specialty coffee company. $40 million turnover with a $200,000 marketing spend a year. That was it, right? Because people told our story for us. So coming back in short, step one, what problem are you going to solve, or what problem do you solve right now? And if you're in business now, what problem are you going to solve in the next 3 years? so that you're always looking futuristic. What makes you more relevant than your competition? And if you're not sure, you better start building some strategies around that. And you should be working in 3 years in advance. What's going to make you more relevant in 3 years to come, right? And then once you've got those two, that's your marketing plan. How do I tell a story better than anyone else? How do I tell a story so people emotionally engage and choose me? And if you nail those three, then you will be a game changer. You will be an entrepreneur. You will be successful. You will continue to be successful. But it's a journey and a process. It's not a set and forget. And that's why you see so many brands that used to be great that aren't great anymore. They used to be best in class. Now they might still be a Reebok. Reebok at one stage was best in class, said no to the Michael Jordan contract and all the rest of it. Nike did the right deal, great negotiation skills by his mother, which is amazing. And look at Nike now and still look at the Jordan brand now because they keep evolving. There's Blockbuster Video now, nowhere to be seen. They were opportunity to have Netflix. They said no. Kodak invented the digital camera. Where are they now? Nokia and Ericsson, the race to the smaller phone, and said nobody's going to buy this big Apple phone. It's useless. What is it? 90% of the market share is Apple iPhone. It's just crazy. So we can learn from all those brands that thought that were best in class, but don't exist anymore. And it's because they didn't continue to follow that model. They didn't continue to look at what problem do I solve, what's going to make me or keep me relevant, and how am I going to tell a story better than anyone else. Long-winded answer, but the short part is that 1, 2, and 3.
Mate, I could just chip that out and that could be the podcast. I think that was brilliant. I love those insights. I love those thoughts there as well. I wanted to say you're obviously very passionate around small business. You're very passionate about collaborating. And I think for me, doing what I'm doing, I'm a mental health first aid instructor, and some of the coaching and consulting I do, I say we need to use each other's strengths and collaborate because there's so much knowledge in there. And it's interesting because so many people feel like they have to hold on to what they've got, right? But for me, going through things, and I know there's a lot of changes that need to happen, and I know you're very passionate around, the challenges that are facing hospitality and small businesses. But if I could ask you, Phil, if you had a magic wand and you waved it across Australia, right, and maybe even the world, but let's just talk Australia at the moment, what would you see the world or Australia from a business perspective? What are some of the policies, some of the changes, some of the platform that you think would really drive Australia forward from an economy perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, and from a business perspective?
Yeah. There's many, but in short, reward good behaviour rather than penalising it. And I'll give some examples. We say employ more people because, small business is the backbone of the country. The moment you employ more people, you pay an extra tax called payroll tax, right? Let's keep bringing it back to the short answer, which is build aspiring entrepreneurship intelligence. Inspire people to own their own business and celebrate them for it, not disadvantage them for them. And the example, because I operate in logic, not in opinion. Because a lot of people say, oh, you're so opinionated. Well, no, I'm not opinionated. I speak logic, right? We tell people, these are facts. We tell people that, have a go, start a business. The more people you employ, the more you're valued. True? These are the words the government talks about. But why are we getting penalised to employ more people with the payroll tax? Right, which is a lot of people don't even know what payroll tax is. Right, once you hit a payroll, it's different each state. In Queensland, it's 1.3 million. In Sydney and Melbourne, I'm not sure. It used to be 600,000. When you hit that in wages, you've got to pay a tax. So you are penalised to employ more people. Fact. Have a go. We want you to have a go. Start a business. We want you to, to do things. Great. You have a go. You go through the ups and downs. You sell that business at a profit. The government takes 25% being capital gains tax. Now, the government is, therefore, everyone that's in business has a silent partner called the government. The government doesn't give you 25% of your losses. So if you need a cash injection or you need money into your business or you're making a loss, the government doesn't give you 24.5%, whatever the actual rate is. Let's round it to 25%. The government doesn't give you that, right? But if you sell and make a profit, you've got to give the government 25% of your net profit. Now, again, this is logic. Have a go. We're with you. No, you're not with me. You're penalising me again for selling something, and that goes for any asset outside of your principal place of purchase, right? That applies to shares, that applies to second property. You sell that, you make a money, you have a go, you do well, the government takes a quarter off you. And that's on top of the ongoing tax you pay as a company. So if you make a profit, you pay 30%, or now it's dropped, I think, to 28%, whatever it is. But that's on top of that. So not only have you paid your tax on your tax, then when you exit, you pay another tax for exiting. So there's some classic examples of logic, not opinion, to back up my statement. What can we do in this country is that we can stop penalizing people for having a go. We can stop penalizing people for being successful. We need to take those stories and tell them and inspire people to want to have a go. Because I'll tell you where the problem in this country is going in the next 15 and 20 years and why I'm so passionate about small business. If we're not inspiring, aspiring, and getting governments at all levels to change their mindset, we won't have people aspiring to start businesses in the next 15 or 20 years. And people are saying, why are so many hospitality venues closing? There's a lot closing because they've gone broke, but there's a lot closing because people just won't renew their leases. Not every business you see closing has gone to the wall. A lot of them are saying this is just too hard. There's no purpose for me now in hospitality to own a restaurant. You know, we've seen this in Melbourne where people have been in the industry 40, 50 years and they go, I'm not waking up to lose money anymore. I'm not waking up to make 2% profit in this business. Now, I know I can't make 20% profit at a time like now, but I'm not waking up to lose money. So I'm going to close my venue. I can tell you in the hospitality industry, where's the next 20-year-olds opening businesses? You know, 15, 20 years ago, the reason we got such a great hospitality economy in Australia right now, a choice, is because 20 years ago, you had 20-year-olds like me going, I'm going to give this a crack. You had people like Dean Merlot, I'm going to give this a crack. You had chefs like Phil Johnson, I'm going to give this a crack. You got all these people that are now older in our 40s, 50s, 60s that 20, 25 years ago gave it a crack. I'm not seeing 20-year-olds now going, I want to start a whole heap of cafes or I want to start a new restaurant. So there are pockets of them, but there's not a lot of them, which means in 15, 20 years, if somebody like me is not pushing that boundary and saying, what are we doing to encourage people to come into business, we won't have an industry and you won't have the luxury of picking a cafe, a restaurant, a bar, a hospitality venue to go to because there won't be anyone that can service it. There won't be people.
And the impact of that is far reaching, right? Because I was chatting in an episode the other day, we were talking about how, you know, a lot of young entrepreneurs or people that want to get into businesses, the numbers, they're just not wanting to do that anymore. They're not wanting the stress. They've seen their parents stress through a lot of stuff, sacrifice their health, sacrifice their time with family. So their mindset's changing as well. But also as well, like people go, the government, you know, kids growing up kind of go, the government takes how much out of your pay?
Yeah.
And what do they do with that? Yeah, and how do they invest back into you?
Yeah. Well, and that's coming back to your original question. So in Brisbane, Gold Coast is the same. We've got an amazing political system. So the short answer is this. Our state and federal governments should be run like our local council in Brisbane and Gold Coast. Now, again, this is not an opinion, this is logic. In Brisbane, which the Brisbane Council takes up all of Brisbane, different in Sydney, different in Melbourne. Every suburb's got a different council, which is why you can't get shit done and there's no uniformity, right? That's why a lot of developers are coming to Brisbane and Brisbane's the place to be because it's one council, right? Now, let's look at the system. Again, this is logic, not opinion. One system takes up the whole of Brisbane. Now, you have a Lord Mayor. He or she, because we've had female Lord Mayors in the past, no matter what side of politics, have all been progressive in Brisbane. Why? The system I keep coming back to. You as a voter, vote for your local councillor. If your local councillor keeps the parks, the roads, everything clean, your rubbish is collected, and you feel value in those rates, you continue to vote for that councillor. So that councillor has to work hard to get your vote. The Lord Mayor, he or she, from any side of politics, has to do exactly the same. The Lord Mayor says, these are my promises, 20% more green space, a more inclusive city, I'm going to put more buses, I'm going to put new free ferries. Whatever promises they make as the leader of council, they have to, if they do not follow through with that, then you get the opportunity to vote them out. You vote for your Lord Mayor in Brisbane, on the Gold Coast, same thing. In state and federal politics, and a lot of people are going to be listening to this going, shit, I didn't even realise that. In state and federal politics, you don't vote for the Premier. You don't vote for the Prime Minister. So he or she can do whatever they freaking want. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to do whatever their members of parliament tell them to do, because otherwise they won't be voted in by the members of parliament. Now, that's not an opinion. right? People say, how come Scott Morrison, Malcolm Turnbull was a great example. Malcolm Turnbull started with the right intention and executed poorly. Why? Because he couldn't do what he wanted to do. He had to do what all the others wanted him to do, otherwise they'd vote him out, because that's what they did to Tony Abbott. Tony Abbott was the last Prime Minister voted in by the people and got voted out by his own party. He didn't go to the polls. The people said, we want Tony Abbott. Love him or hate him, the people voted him in. And what happened? Then he got voted out by his own party. So how are you going to have a progressive country and a progressive state if there is no accountability? Because you know where the true accountability is? At the voting polls. If that person does not do what they say they're going to do, he or she, then you have the opportunity in Brisbane to vote them in and vote them out. We don't have that opportunity in state or federal politics. So I know people say you're
agreeing. So we work on election cycles, right? And this is what frustrates me, right? Because we know, like, and we've seen it the start of this year, right? Is we're coming up to a state election here in Queensland. What happens? The cash splash, and we're promising all these things, and then the interesting thing is what people see is all the photo opportunities from politicians saying we're going to, give $2 million to this and $4 million to more sporting clubs and all these kind of things. But there isn't actually a report card every 12 months. And look, from a real estate perspective, Antonia and Peter Brewer and the REIQ have been really pushing on this housing side of things. They come out and kind of go, this is the report card. These are all the things that were said 12 months ago, and this is how far we've come. And what we need prior to a state election is actually the media to say, this is the report card. This is all the things they promised before the last state election, or this is what they promised before the last federal election. And they've done 2% of it or 12% of it or whatever it is, right? But it's nowhere near 100%. And if it came out there, governments would change. But the problem is that everything comes in and it's like, okay, what have we got to do in the next 3 years or 4 years, depending on when their terms are? And this is what we're going to do. And then it's just this cycle. And the problem is we don't have future growth and we don't have a consistent approach moving forward, because it's just these election cycles, and they're not thinking in 40 years or 20 years or 10 years. They're thinking in 3 years or 4 years, and they don't think more forward than that because they don't have to.
No, and then what happens is that they do what they have to do, clutching at straws. I'm very vocal. There's no such thing as free. Oh, we're giving you 50-cent fares. Well, how stupid is that? Public transport already runs at a loss to the taxpayer. So who covers the loss? The taxpayer covers the loss, right? That's right. So whilst they're giving you 50-cent fares, you're paying for it in your taxes because somebody's got to cover that loss. Again, this is not an opinion. This is logic, right? When they go and say, I'm going to give you $1,000 back on your electricity, well, you cause the electricity problem. Where's your, as you said, where's your report card? It came out in the estimates about what they did with that station wasn't being maintained. And that's why petrol prices, that's why electricity prices went up. Well, where's the report card on that? In a public company, you'd be sacked. In a public company, you'd be gone. So in short, people say, what do you wish for state and federal politics? Run it like a public company. If you don't want to change the system like it is in state, in local council, then run it like a public company. You got to provide a report card. And if you don't achieve the things that you say you're going to achieve, I'll give you an example. When they introduced GST, they said they were going to get rid of payroll tax and stamp duty. Now, people voted for the GST because, they're going to get rid of payroll tax and stamp duty. It makes sense. They didn't get rid of it. They didn't get rid of either. Now, that would never happen in a public company. Certainly wouldn't happen in a private company because people get fired. Right. In a public company, you go to jail because you breached your protocols, right? But as a politician, there's no accountability. So if you want to streamline further, obviously the ultimate dream is change the system. The next one is the scorecard, or ultimately give them, the current Prime Minister, Albanese, made promises. This is not an opinion. He made the promise. He went to the polls saying he was going to lower the cost of living. Now, at the time I said, I don't know how a Prime Minister can make that promise because there's too many levers to pull, right? Just silly. But it was all marketing. Now, he can do that because he knew there's no accountability. But if we put a system of accountability that said, we're going to lower the cost of living, great, you get voted in. And within 12 months, you don't lower that cost of living, or then you should be fired. Right. And that's logic. That's not an opinion. And that's probably the biggest problem we've got in Australia is people don't use logic enough, right? They want to talk about who's right or wrong. I'm not interested in who's right or wrong. I'm interested in what the logic is. Payroll tax. So one of the ones we're going to be taking up all state governments on is this. When was the last time payroll tax got reformed as in the threshold got lifted? Well, in Queensland, it was like 12, 13 years ago. The wages were half of what they are now. And people go, well, what do you mean? Well, they used to collect $3 billion a year in revenue from payroll tax in Queensland. It's now $8.5 or $9 billion. So that just shows that it hasn't gone up in proportion to wages. Now, you can't argue that logic. Now, it's actually a criminal tax because it should have been abolished, but it wasn't. But at least you can't afford to get rid of it. Well, then lift the threshold. Show that you, like Campbell Newman did. Lift the threshold to show that it needs to rise so that you can encourage people to employ more people. Because why are you being penalised to employ more people? I'll give you an example. The commune's still a startup, right? 3 years in. Our payroll is $2.5 million a year, right? We lost 1.1 million last year, which is all budgeted for. We budgeted to do that. I had to pay payroll tax. So I've got to pay the government to employ more people, but I made a loss. Now, just let that sink in. Like, is that logic? That's not an opinion, and that's not me crying poor. But is that logic? That I'm getting penalised to employ more people, even though I haven't made a profit? It's just crazy. I'll give you another one, Steve, right, that we're tackling here at the Coffee Commune. Is, everyone gets charged at the terminal for using their own money in the bank account, DD transaction, right? Now, if you use a credit card, fair enough. That's not your money. You should be charged. Well, the terminal gets charged, the vendor gets charged, and then they pass it on to the customer most of the time, right? But you're getting charged a credit card, no problem. It's not your money. But they're charging you also if you use your money. But the bank's double dipping. They're charging you a monthly fee to have a bank account. Now, how come government at the federal level hasn't stepped in and said, hang on a minute, this is not right. You shouldn't be charging people, the vendor, because the vendor charges the person anyway, to use debit, especially if you're trying to get rid of cash. Then what right do you have to charge people to use their own money when they're getting charged by the bank a fee? So there's no reform around that. They should be tapping into the banks and say, you pick. You want to make your money at the terminal, or do you want to make your money on bank fees?
But what they rely on, and there's probably two things, but I'll add a third thing in because you've mentioned it a lot through this conversation, but it's people don't have the awareness.
Yeah.
People don't have the understanding. And thirdly, I'm going to add in, people don't have the logic. Yeah. They don't understand it. They don't think about it.
And that's what we're doing, right? Like I'll be on the ABC radio tonight, 7:30, talking about, coffee in our industry. And I talk with logic. I don't talk with opinions, and because it's about facts. So the people, but it all filters down to awareness, trying to make people aware. Now, not everyone's going to agree, and people call me all sorts of names, and I couldn't give two shits. 95% of people agree, and 5% don't. I don't care. That's 95% that do agree, and are learning something from it. Like the amount of people that don't know about payroll tax, they don't know about capital gains tax, and they go, "Oh, you're just crying poor." I'm not crying poor. I've applied the logic. If you don't incentivize or inspire people to start a business, why should they? And if they don't, this is how it's going to impact you. You like going to your local cafe? You like going to your local restaurant, bar, whatever it is, pub, tavern, whatever tickles your fancy? It's not going to be around. It's, there's no such thing as super profits anymore when it comes to bloody, hospitality, but don't they have a right to make a profit? If they're running a good show, now don't get me wrong, there's a lot of bad operators up there. But if people are running a good show, don't they have the right to make a profit? They've invested in it. They've done the blood, sweat, and tears, and they're employing people. And we want to make sure they're paying people right. That you want to be paying them more than what the award is. We certainly do, because we want better people, so we pay more than the award. So this is a whole economy. This is a whole circular economy, and if it's not, it's going to stop. And that's what people don't realize. So when I'm out there on the the grandstand or whatever they want to call it, it's about awareness. It's trying to make people aware. Did you know that 45% of what you pay in a restaurant, it goes to wages? Like it used to be 30, 35%. It's now 45%. Did you know that dishwashers are on like $45, $50 an hour on a Saturday and Sunday? And that's why there's a 10% surcharge now on Saturdays and Sundays, which still doesn't cover the wages. Like, do you know that? And people go, no, I just see everything's getting expensive. Well, it's getting expensive because, there's the logic behind it. Wages have gone through the roof, and we want to pay our hospitality people well. Why should they be paid, bloody $20 an hour? They should be on $35, $40, $45 an hour. That's what they should be getting. But in order for that to happen, people are going to pay $6, $7 for a coffee. They've got to pay $30 for a plate of pasta, $50 for a steak. It's all relative, because I tell you what, I want to pay my people really well. I want to pay people what they're worth. And I can't do that. I can't pay somebody $40 an hour and then charge $3 for a cup of coffee. because I'm going to go broke and I won't be around. And so we talk a lot about that in terms of awareness, in terms of logic, and of course, from a customer's point of view, if I'm paying $6 for a coffee, I want it made by a really good barista with a good attitude. I want good quality coffee. I want good quality milk, and I want it in a good quality cup. Otherwise go and get bloody cardboard bullshit from 7-Eleven, push a machine, powdered milk, whatever they serve in different venues, and pay cheaper for it. So when we talk about a $6 cup of coffee, yes, from the customer's perspective, it's got to be from a professional barista serving with a smile, with good service, using good beans, good equipment, good milk in a cup. That makes the whole experience. Otherwise, make it at home.
And one thing that I think a lot of cafes and a lot of coffee shops have lost over the years, and the coffee shops I go to, whether it's here on the coast or whether it's back at home, I go there and they go, I'll ring up and I'll order my coffee on the way, or I'll walk in. And sometimes I'll walk in, they've already made my coffee because they know what my coffee is. The morning, Steve, right? So, if anyone's listening that's got a business out there, or you're working as a barista, make sure you know your customers, your regulars and everything like that, because, even sometimes I've been to places that the coffee may not be fantastic, and my wife's more a coffee connoisseur than I am. I'm very more new to coffee in recent years, but for me, if I go somewhere and the coffee's not fantastic, but the experience is good and they know my name and they make me feel welcome and we have a good chat and it's a good start to the day, that puts more flavour in my coffee.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. That sense of community, it's that emotional engagement. Same with restaurants. If you get an order wrong, then apologise. I apologise. I didn't hear that right, or I didn't do this, so I'll fix that straight away. We're not all going to be perfect. We make mistakes all the time. I make plenty of them, but I'll certainly own them. And put my hand up and go, look, that's not good, and this is how we fix it. So, it really is. It's about that emotional connectivity. It's about feeling connected. And that's such important. And that's a lot of what you pay for too, is that connectivity. It's not just a product or service. If we looked at the cost of just the product, it's like $1.50, $2. But, it's not. Throw the labour on top of that. But the labour's got to come with a good experience, service with a smile, interact with the customer. That's the sort of stuff. So it really is, I say to people, I use it as an interview technique. If I'm not sure about somebody, take them out for a coffee or take them out for lunch and see how they treat the wait staff. People always comment with me is that when they're out with me, they'll say, you always stop and acknowledge the wait staff, even if you're mid-sentence. So I'm acknowledging them because they're being in service to me. So I'm saying thank you, and acknowledging them. But you want to see a lot about a person, go to dinner with them, go to lunch with them, or go out for a coffee and just see how they treat the staff. It tells you really, really quickly, gives you some insights into what people are about.
That's a great tip. That's a really great tip. Phil, I'm really appreciative of your time today. And it's interesting, I usually have a number of questions to end on, but throughout this discussion, you've touched on success, you've touched on your mentors and the people that taught you the most. So I don't have to ask those questions. But I do want to ask one question. When you started Di Bella Coffee, you started with $5,000, passion, purpose, as a budding entrepreneur. Can I ask you, if you had 5,000 and you were going through that journey again today, what are just some of the key things that you would do differently that, knowing what you know now compared to what you did back then?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And the answer is the Coffee Commune. That's why I built the Coffee Commune. Because back then I had to use somebody else's roaster when they closed after hours. I was roasting at 12 o'clock at night. I was packing coffee out of my garage, because I didn't have a premises. So that's why we started the Coffee Commune. And which in short was to help people, accelerate their potential quickly. So we've got 40 odd startups now in working out of the commune, where they have the world's best equipment, world's best advice, education programs, buying power. You start a coffee business tomorrow and you can buy coffee machines the same price that someone who's been in business for 30 years has, because we connect the dots for you and all the rest of it. So for the listeners out there, they're going, but I don't want to start a coffee business. The clincher is this, and the key answer is this, is there is now many different opportunities and environments and business groups out there that can help accelerate your potential. Now, whether that's BX, BNI, whether that's, collaborations, Chamber of Commerce's, get involved in them, so if you feel so that you aren't alone, so check out in your industry what environments are out there for you to join that can help you accelerate your potential. And that's what I would do differently. So if the Coffee Commune didn't exist, that's what I'd be doing differently. Is saying, right, I never got involved in a chamber of commerce. I never got involved in business groups in 2002. And that's something that I would have done different. So you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to learn through the trials and tribulations and all the rest of it. So anyone listening out there, if you're looking at obviously coffee business, come and talk to us at the Commune. We've got 780 members here. A lot of them are cafes, and a lot of them we don't produce their coffee for. And that's fine. We don't, they're still part of them because we've got education programs. We've got buying power. We do advocacy. We're running round tables in the next couple of months to get all the info out of them on what we can talk to local, state and federal governments about for our industry. So we do that regardless. So the facility's one side and then the community's the other side of what we do. But anyone out there that says, hey, I'm starting a business, how do I fast track? Get involved in the community. Get involved and look around what support there is for you to be able to share. I chair a board. Coraggio isn't a great way. It's advisory boards. I started in Sydney. Now it's in Sydney, Melbourne, Gold Coast and Brisbane. I chair a board on the Gold Coast. So, a lot of them are startups or accelerating businesses that have been around for a while. And I'm about to start chairing a board in Brisbane of all business owners around the table that are accelerating their potential. So instead of building their own advisory board, they all come once a month together under the Coraggio model to accelerate their potential. So get involved in things like that. There are many tools out there for you to do, and I wish I had them back in 2002.
That's great advice. That's really great advice. Phil, for those that want to connect with the Coffee Commune, connect with you personally, what's the best ways?
So me personally, LinkedIn is always great. And with the Commune, we've got an app now, the Coffee Commune app. Download the app. We'll even give you a free membership. If you download the app, you can access a free entry membership, which keeps you across what we're doing. There's education workshops, videos, all that sort of stuff on our Coffee Commune app. So they're the two best ways. So me personally, LinkedIn, with what we're doing at the Commune, and there's marketing workshops, and I do stuff on there, all the stuff and connectivity and learning. It's also, we got HR specialists talking about the new HR, IR laws on there. BDO's always giving financial advice around budgets and all that sort of stuff. And Hill House lawyers are talking about legal stuff. So we built an amazing community with information where people are all, it's like it's where the Yellow Pages meets Facebook meets, a Google for our industry. And it's made up of people that are, like I said, lawyers, accountants, insurance brokers. It's not just, coffee people. There's all different people that are doing business within our industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to come and have a tour one day because I'd love to know more about what you're doing and be able to connect some of the people that I know into the Coffee Commune as well. So, but as I said, really grateful for your insights, appreciative of your time. It's been a fantastic, really enjoyable discussion. So thank you, Phil. And I look forward to connecting with you, more into the future.
Thanks, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, mate.